We will base our discussion on Matthew chapter 7 verses 1 and 2. Do not judge so you will not be judged, for in the way you judge you will be judged, and by your standard of measure it will be measured to you. These two verses from the Gospel of Matthew have been interpreted to mean that as Christians we should not judge or harshly criticize anyone for any reason, since no one is perfect, including us. However, I believe these verses describe judging others based on physical appearance and occupation. Now, I do agree we shouldn't jump to conclusions based on the actions and or words of an individual as well. We should always look at the context and evidence in everything, including appearance and occupation. Part of the reason I believe that holding followers accountable for what they say and do is appropriate is because in 1 Corinthians chapter 5 verses 12 and 13, Paul says, "For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Do you not judge those who are within the church, but those who are outsiders God judges?" What Paul is getting at in this passage is that we can't and have no business to condemn those outside the family of believers for their conduct if we don't condemn those within the family first. Paul also says at the end, "Remove the wicked man from among yourselves." This is a quote from many places in Deuteronomy, chapter 17 verse 7, chapter 19 verse 19, chapter 21 verse 21, chapter 22 verse 21 and 24, and chapter 24 verse 7, with these verses appearing after many of the laws laid out in the Mosaic covenants. I believe that Paul quoted this to show the importance of removing the bad apples from the church, those committing ongoing major sins, or those who have committed an insane crime, especially if they haven't repented, so their corruption cannot infect the rest of the congregation, after which we can then focus on those outside, as they too can influence followers, since Christians interact with the outside world daily. Chapter 7 verse 24 in the Gospel of John also agrees that judging actions and words are important, with it saying, "Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment." These words spoken by Jesus himself confirm that his followers should not judge people outwardly, but with righteous judgment. You should be asking, what is righteous judgment? I believe the righteous judgment Jesus is talking about is using the Bible when concerning someone's behavior. What does it say about the situation? What does it say about the consequences of the behavior? Christians should always consult the Bible, especially when it involves another human being. This verse and the discussion so far should leave you with the question, what is judging according to appearance? I think what Jesus is pointing to is concluding your opinions on someone's personality based on their looks or occupation. On the idea of looks, Christians shouldn't see someone who's homeless and assume he or she is dangerous, nor look at a man wearing a suit or a woman wearing a fancy dress and assume they are safe. Not all homeless people are dangerous and shouldn't be approached, nor are well-dressed people kind and should be approached. Judging someone solely on the way they look is something a follower of Jesus shouldn't do, like the saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." Treat people on the way they act, not the way they look. The same goes for occupation. Zacchaeus, a tax collector, whom Jesus dined with at his house after first meeting him. Why would Jesus bond with him? Tax collectors at the time were known for cheating the poor, so why? Because in his heart he was not evil. When he realized the error of his ways, he repented and changed, with Zacchaeus stating after meeting Jesus, "Behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much." From Luke chapter 19 verse 8. Another example from scripture is the Canaanite harlot, prostitute, Rahab, from Joshua chapter 2, and verses 22, 23 and 25 of chapter 6. She was used by God to hide the 2 Israelite spies sent by Joshua to investigate Jericho. Again, why would God side with someone of such an immoral character? Because he looked beyond the surface, looking into the heart, seeing what her true nature was. Like Zacchaeus, saw them as people with a heart after God, saving and redeeming them as such. Judging others' behavior, especially Christians, is extremely important. Holding us accountable is the only way to bring about change in one's life. However, it is important not to let your criticism be surface level. Make sure you know the context of each person's situation. Some people's circumstances lead them on pathways they should not travel on, only doing so out of a sense of desperation. I'll end with 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7. Samuel has been tasked to anoint the new king of Israel from the house of Jesse. He believed God wanted Eliab the oldest son, but God wanted the youngest, David, saying to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart."